Welcome to By the Books, the podcast helping business owners navigate the complex world of business, tax, and bookkeeping. Now, to the owner and president of Sakline, Lindsay Kline.
Thank you for joining us today. This is Lindsay Kline with Sakline, honest, accurate bookkeeping performed on time. I am here today with Jennifer Loehding, who is a mindset coach, a blogger, a speaker, an author, and the host of the Starter Girlz podcast. Thank you so much for joining me today. It's awesome to have you.
Yeah, thanks, Lindsay. Thanks for having me here.
So we met, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 months ago at a networking event, and I always seem to gravitate towards the coaches because you guys always seem to have a dynamic presence in the room, and of course you were no exception. So I remember just kind of latching onto you like a sponge, like, oh, I want to be next to this girl. She's fascinating. So I, of course, every time I talk to you, learn something new, and you always get me thinking, which I love. So today you have an interesting topic. Tell us. What do you want to talk about today?
I do. Today we're going to talk about how to slay your day to master long-term success.
Nice.
So yeah, and first of all, I also want to say that, when you talk about meeting coaches, I'm the same way too, because I tend to gravitate towards them as well, just because they have this, I think it's that energy, that positive vibe that kind of just resonates. And I don't know about you, but like I always say, I'm an energy feeder and an energy giver. So I naturally gravitate towards people who kind of exude that energy. And it's like I can spot them like, with radar.
Yes,
There's my person I need to talk to.
Yes, exactly.
So I get what you're saying is what I'm saying.
Yes, exactly. So how does one slay their day?
Well, first of all, in talking about that, I think when we're talking about, like entrepreneurs and business people, a lot of times we think about the usual things of, looking at our goal sheet, looking at our to-do list, having our strategy. But I always say it goes a little deeper than that. And really, a lot of my work comes from my own personal journey, right? It comes from me having to go through my own health crisis and really stepping into that and looking at, this resonating pattern that was going on for me, which was I was constantly chasing crisis and I was constantly chasing goals. And if you've ever done that, think about this. If you've ever done that, like you have this really big goal you go after, right? And when you hit the goal, what happens? You get super excited, right? Because you mastered the goal. And then all of a sudden, this reality sets in. It's almost like a depression because you go, okay, that's over. What do I do now? Like, how do I top that, right? And so when I went through this whole process of this crisis, this health crisis, which is a whole nother podcast, but when I went through that, I really realized that I had this pattern of doing this. I was either right in the middle of this massive goal that I was trying to achieve, or I was in the middle of a crisis, and it was interchangeable back and forth. And so that was kind of my journey that I went through that taught me how to become more aware of practicing in the day, enjoying the day, the process, so that when those big victories happen, they're really just icing on the cake. You've learned to navigate and be excited all the way through that journey. And so I talk about this whole slaying your day, to master this long-term success, so that instead of waiting for those big moments, you're having moments all the way through the process, right? And so there's a lot of different things, I talk about all these habits, but, a couple different things that I talk about. One is really just learning how to expand the mind. I'm a big believer in reading. And when I say expanding the mind, that's, yes, listen to Lindsay's podcast. Listen to anybody's podcast that gets you fired up. Audio books, reading, anything that is going to really just help you expand your thinking. Okay. And that's one of the things I talk about. The other thing is really just sitting down and taking the time to strategize your day. Get a to-do list. What is the one thing that you can do from where you are right now with what you have to get you closer to that goal? So many times we look at these big goals and we go, okay, that's huge and unattainable because we just don't see ourselves in that position. But what is something you can do right now with what you have from where you are that can get you closer to that? Backpedal that back. Take it back, that big goal. Backpedal it back a little bit further and a little bit further and a little bit further until you can see that one thing. So really, reading, to-do lists are important. Affirmations are important. How can you wrap your big goal around this get this vision statement for yourself that you can look at every single day. And I talk about sticking that thing on your mirror, stick it on the front of your computer, put it on the refrigerator, wherever you are going to see that thing. And then, of course, there's a whole list of these. I've got like about 7 or 8 of these that I talk about in my book. And funny, I wrote my book, and after I did that, I developed more. And then I thought, okay, I need to do a 2.0. So there's a lot of things that, that you can do to really help you master that day.
So what are some examples of affirmations that you do yourself?
So affirmations, I have one that I do on my podcast each week. And if you haven't listened to my podcast, it's my favorite. I open up with it before I bring my guest on every week. But it's today is a great day to be brave. You might as well start now. You have the power to change your circumstances any day you decide. Let today be that day. Rise up, be amazing, be you, do you.
That's awesome. I like that one.
That's mine. Now, affirmations have to be yours because, really, when I tell people to create affirmations, they need to be really a vision of where you see yourself. Mine's a little bit more of a mantra, but an affirmation's really where do you see yourself going, right? Your big vision. Pull it back into the present. So it may be, I am the super-sided Lindsay Kline, rocking my business, making six-figure income, whatever that looks like for you, but pulling it into the present.
Oh, interesting. So you're taking what you want to be in the future
absolutely.
And speaking it as if it's happening now.
Absolutely.
Oh,
because the brain is a really tricky thing. What we believe becomes our reality. And so whatever we're feeding into our subconscious every day, we're acting out. And so if I'll give you an example. If we get up in the morning and we say, I'm tired, what are we going to do? We're going to confirm that. We got to have some confirmation bias, right? So we're going to keep doing behaviors that actually support us being tired. Now, we may be tired, but we're going to be more tired because we've told ourselves we're tired, and we're going to try to prove that, right? And so what happens is all day long, we go, I'm tired, and then we keep doing behaviors that keep kind of supporting that, just reaffirms it. And so whatever we're telling ourselves is what we're believing. And so with affirmations, what I tell people, it's not a magical fix. You've got a lot of things you got to work on here, but it is a piece of the puzzle that you're adding to your daily habits that when you get up in the morning, if you're waking up, and sometimes you may not even know what that is. For me, it used to be, something magical is going to happen today. That's what I told myself for a year. Every single day, something magical is going to happen today. I didn't know what that was going to be. But every day I pulled that in. And so I would wake up and I would just get myself excited at the thought of something happening.
Nice. So one of the goals that I have had, it's been kind of a lifelong goal, is to lose weight. I have had a lifelong battle with weight issues. And there are times where I've been really successful, gung-ho, been good for a while, and then all of a sudden I fall off the wagon, right? And then it usually takes a long time before I get back on the wagon.
Right.
So how can I apply some of these principles to weight loss?
That's a good one. And you're so right. And I think, here's the thing. When you think of us as human beings, on the outside of us, I always talk about this. We have these quadrants, right? We have our health and well-being in one. We have our business, our careers, right? Vocation. Yes. We have our time and money freedom. And then we have our relationships. And here's the thing with the mind. I talk about these limiting beliefs that we all have, right? And they start when they form when we're a child, and they kind of get ingrained in us. They stay put. The thing is these limiting beliefs show up in all areas, and they manifest in different ways. And people often will say, okay, well, I don't like rejection, and that may show up in our businesses because we have to make those calls we don't like, right? And somebody turns us down and like, oh, there's that fear of rejection, right? But these things play in all of our lives. They play in every piece of our life. And so a lot of this stuff will intersect, right? And so with that particular situation, I tell people really getting back to the core of who you are, continuing with the reading every single day, the expanding the mind every single day, self-help, things that are going to get you fired up every single day, continuing your strategy and your to-do list every day, your affirmations. If we can focus on working on us, those pieces become easier, because what happens is you build this sustainable change. You do this, like for me, when I started all this, I was already exercising because I had been a marathon runner and I had taught aerobics for many years. So for me, that was very just natural at this point.
Okay, so I'm not a marathon runner.
I know. But what I'm telling you is, but what wasn't easy for me was reading. You see what I'm saying? That was not an easy task for me because I hated it. I didn't like it. I didn't value it. When I made that my decision, so like you would make a weight loss, I made reading my choice of change. And I committed to that one small thing every single day, that one small thing. And it wasn't to read a book. It wasn't to read 100 books. It was just to read X number of minutes a day consistently.
Nice.
Okay. And then I just built up to that to where I sort of kind of created a habit with that. And now I know that when I do not read, guess what happens? My creative thinking stops. And I now recognize that. So for me, it is I have to do that. So I look at that very much the same way as when we're trying to do exercise and weight loss, is that if we can really get back to the core, that is one piece I talk about, is taking care of the body. But I always tell people, start at the top first, get really consistent with your reading, expanding your mind, your affirmations, your to-do list, because if you can get consistent with that, this other stuff gets a little easier.
Interesting. So you're saying the affirmations and the reading and all of that will eventually lead to a healthier weight.
Yes, because what will happen is you will want to make the change. You will start feeling better about it, and you will want to add, because as you grow each time, you want to add a little more to your lifestyle. You know what I'm saying? It's a process, and I think so many times people get in there and they're like, I want to lose all this weight, and that's why we see these yo-yo dieting, right? We get in and gung-ho, but we have no systems in place. And so it's really, there's more accountability partners, coaches, mentors. There's more to this, but really focusing, I feel like, in these steps helps that make that success so much easier.
That's interesting. I'll have to start trying this and see if it works.
It keeps you committed. It helps keep you committed, because think about it. If you have this goal to do this, right? And you get up every day and you're kind of like, it sounds fun, but I got to do it, right? Think about it. When you go and you put on a 5-minute video and you hear Coach Payne talk, right? Or Tony Robbins or Gary Vee or Jen Sincero, one of these people come on and they say something, and you get done after listening to a 2 to 3 minute thing, you are fired up. Are you not? You're fired up. That changes your whole frequency, right?
Nice.
Now you come into this, I got this.
That's awesome.
You see what I'm saying? So if you have these steps in place, it makes this piece so much more doable.
Okay, so how about whenever you stumble and you do something you didn't want to do, right? Let's take the weight loss example, right? You're doing so great, and then somebody brings out the cheesecake.
Right. The cheesecake.
And you eat half of it.
Right.
And then you get that, oh gosh, I can't believe I just did that. What do you do with those failures, if you will?
Well, I think first of all, changing the way you look at it, because I don't look at it as failure.
Okay.
I look at it as you had a moment, you probably learned from it, right? You looked at it and said, okay, that wasn't.
You would think.
Yeah, well, but here's the thing. I think, Lindsay, if you sort of kind of have the mindset of it's okay to do that, the victory is the rebound. Okay, it's okay to fall off of the wagon. The victory comes when you say, okay, I had the cheesecake. So what? Tomorrow's a new day. I get back up. And so I think that, that's the way I look at everything. I go in and I don't really, and I know this is hard for a lot of people because we try to kind of ruminate on our mistakes and we're like, why did I do that? Which you're never probably going to get a true answer, right? I just wanted the cheesecake, right? I want the cheesecake. But if you just look at that and go, I ate the cheesecake. So what? Tomorrow's the new day, and pick right back up. You didn't really fail. You rebounded and you got back up. And I think that's the lesson in everything, whether it's business, your health, relationships, anything you're trying to do, the victory comes in the rebound. I read a book. He was a guy that's going to be on my podcast soon. He'll be released. His name is Dr. Rob Bell. He's a famed sports psychologist, and he has a book out called Puke and Rally. And he talks about this, I want to say it was either a 50-mile or 50-kilometer race that he did, and he became extremely dehydrated and walked off, had to exit the race.
Oh, wow.
Went back to his cabin with his family, and he heard his kid's voice in his head because the kid said, Daddy, you didn't finish. And so he kept hearing this play in his head. So he showered, ate some food, went back to the race, and finished. Was the last one to come in, but he finished the race. And his book, Puke and Rally, he talks about, it's the comeback. It's the comeback. No matter what you're doing, that becomes the victory for you. So I think recognizing that it's okay to have those moments, that we're all human, and just say, owning it. I ate the cheesecake. I wanted it. I feel bad about it, but tomorrow's a new day, and I'm a victor, and I can get back up and get back on the wagon.
Yeah, I think that is good advice. And if I had the capability of doing that the day after every single time, probably wouldn't have taken me so long to get back on it.
Well, and a lot of times I tell people, when you have a situation like that happen, have a pity party about it. So give yourself a time frame. I say put a time on it. So, in my case, let's say I've had a bad day. Maybe I didn't do the work I wanted to do, make the calls I needed to make, client calls or whatever. And I went through the day and I'm kind of beating myself up because I'm like, Jennifer, you just kind of suck today. I own my stuff. Like, I own it, right? I'm going to suck for today. I give myself a time limit. I'm like, you've got till tonight to pout about this, do what you need to do, throw a temper tantrum, sulk, whatever. But when you wake up tomorrow morning, it's over. Like, I put a time limit. So I tell my people that I'm working with a lot of times, just cap that. And the more you train yourself to do that, the easier it becomes to rebound. It'll get quicker and quicker and quicker.
That's good advice.
It's almost like a little process.
There you go. So how big or small should goals be?
I think for everyone, obviously it's different depending on what they want to do, but I think it should be enough that it scares you a teeny bit, but doesn't make you
overwhelm you.
Yeah, you don't want to get like decision paralysis. You don't want to get something and then you really don't know where to go because you can't see it. It goes back to what I said earlier, backpedaling it to where you can see it. I was working with someone the other day and I was talking about, when I was in Mary Kay. I was just an independent sales director with Mary Kay, and I remember coming into the company back in 1999 as a consultant thinking, oh, I would love to be in that position, but it looks so far to me. I just couldn't see myself, getting there. 2.5 years later, I came into that position and I looked back the other direction and thought, oh, well, that wasn't so bad. You know what I mean? But my point being is that it was those little small, minute steps. And so I set these smaller goals that seemed kind of attainable. And then once I reached them, that became more visual to me. It became more real. And so, the goal has to scare you enough that you go, oh, this is a little uncomfortable, that I'm going to grow. But it also needs to be broken down enough that you can see it happening, because you're not going to know. I mean, honestly, you're not going to know all the hows. If you're not going to know. If I told you, 3 years ago, I would be doing a podcast or have written a book, I would have laughed at myself because that wouldn't have happened. I never even saw that coming. Right. But you do one thing. I saw what I wanted to do. I saw where I wanted to go, and I really didn't know how that was all going to happen. It just, one thing leads to the next. So make them real, but stretch yourself a little bit.
I like that. So I deal with a lot of business owners, obviously,
right,
with my bookkeeping company, small business owners primarily, and I assume that you do too. Right. What would you say in that demographic of business owners, what is the biggest hindrances they have that you see to prevent them from really taking themselves and their business where they could, where the potential is?
I think it's limiting beliefs and what they believe about themselves and their business, their worth. And, all of us get into, business, I think, as entrepreneurs, and we've got this, I got this, rah, I can do this, right? But somewhere along the line, and it's different. I work with a lot of women that have trouble asking for payment. Like that's money is a big issue. It was for me, certainly for a long time. I had to get comfortable with being okay asking for my worth. Like this is what I charge for my services, because I would always want to negotiate. I think, oh, am I really worth that amount? And maybe I'll bring that price down. So I really think it's just these limiting beliefs that surface in our lives. And when I start to work with people and really unpack that, it's amazing to me to see how these trickle in. Like it might be a fear of investing into your own business because you've had failure before, like you've had repeated failures, and then they like, oh, do I want to pay to have that person come into my company to help me, take off some of that workload so that I don't have to wear all the hats in my business. Well, if that's going to bring you back sanity and help you be more effective in the areas that you do really well, yeah, it might be worth bringing somebody in to take over some of that other minutia for you, you know?
Right.
So a lot of it is our value and what we think we're worth and what we think we can do. You've heard that saying where they say we always like overestimate what we can do in a short time and underestimate what we can do, in the long term, right? We think we can do all these things, right, in the short term, right? And then we end up failing, we get disappointed, but then we underestimate what we were able to do in the long term if we just stay committed to that process.
That's good. I like that.
Yeah.
I'll have to think about that.
Yeah, I heard that again the other day, and I'm like, I've heard that so many times, and it's so good every time I hear it.
That's
so
awesome.
Powerful.
That's great. So tell our audience where they can find you.
Absolutely. You can go to my page at jenniferloehding.com. I'm assuming you guys will put the links in there.
Yes,
but
we'll put it in the
go to
page notes.
jenniferloehding.com. Easy. Everything's in there. Podcast, link, book. All my information's all in there.
And it's Starter Girlz is the name, right?
Starter Girlz is the podcast.
Where can they find you? On Apple?
Yes, Starter Girlz is everywhere.
Okay.
We're all over. We do have a YouTube page and then, of course, iTunes, Spotify. But if they go to the jenniferloehding.com, there's a link to that as well.
Okay, nice. And spell loading, because I know it's a unique spelling.
Yeah, it's Loeh, H as in Harry, D as in dog, ING.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today. This has been good.
Thank you, Lindsay.
As always, I am enriched by talking with you.
And it's
so
fun.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, you're fun. I love chatting with you.
Me too. And I am Lindsay Kline with Sakline, honest, accurate bookkeeping performed on time. You can find me at info@sakline.com or our website, SAKLINE, sakline.com. Thank you so much for joining us today. Until next time, have a great week, everyone.
Buy the Books is presented by Sakline, honest, accurate bookkeeping performed on time. For more information on Sakline services or to get a hold of Lindsay, visit sakline.com or email info@sakline.com.
The information provided on this website and podcast does not and is not intended to constitute legal advice. Instead, all information, content, and materials available are for general information purposes only. Information provided by Sakline may not constitute the most up-to-date legal or other information. Listeners should contact their attorney to obtain advice with respect to any particular legal matter and should refrain from acting on the basis of this information without first seeking legal advice from counsel in the relevant jurisdiction. Only your individual attorney can provide assurances that the information contained herein and your interpretation of it is applicable or appropriate to your particular situation.